Welcome to Lancaster Hi-Fi. Recently did another video on this Pioneer SX-828. And while I've got it, I'd like to do a sort of comparison and review the merits of it versus this Yamaha that I came upon recently as part of a kind of a trade for one of my tube amps. They output similar power. They don't look the same, that's for sure. And they sure don't weigh the same. This Pioneer is a tank in comparison. And they sure don't cost the same. I was just looking on eBay for recent sale prices of the Pioneer SX-828. And, you know, some of the prices went as low as, say, $200 plus shipping. But for one in really top-notch condition, especially one that's had the electronics thoroughly restored, you could pay $1,000. So, you know, you pay that $200. It might work okay, but you might need to spend a few $100s on it to get it into top-notch working condition. This one has had that work done. The Yamaha, you can get that to your door for under $150, and it will probably work fine for the foreseeable future because it's not very old and it's reasonably well built. So there are some outstanding questions. What is something like the aesthetics and the just appeal of the vintage aesthetic of the Pioneer? What is that worth to you? Does one sound markedly better than the other? I don't know yet, but I'm going to kind of venture a guess that there's not going to be a huge difference in how they sound. I expect the Yamaha will sound pretty good. Still, I think a lot of us, especially those of you watching this video or regular viewers of my channel, are going to fall down pretty heavily on the side of the appeal of the Pioneer. But I think it's worth, you know, for new viewers, for people who are interested in hi-fi gear, who want to know, well, what's the deal with vintage? Why would I want to get into vintage gear? Should I get into vintage gear? Is there something beyond the aesthetics of it? Or, you know, maybe you'd like to know, well, maybe I can live with the less aesthetically appealing Yamaha as opposed to the Pioneer if it sounds really good. So let's do a comparison of these two receivers and just, you know, see what the pros and cons of each are. Let's check out the front panel of this Yamaha. Power on and off. Headphone jack. 2 speakers. Got a bunch of little bitty buttons up here. Bass control, treble control, balance, loudness. These are in that sort of trademark Yamaha style. Input selector and volume. Now notice the input selector has no thingies on it. Oh yeah, pure direct, so that you can bypass the loudness, the bass and treble and all that. Now what do we have here? Jeez Louise, dimmer, FM mode, something, memory, clear, preset, minus and forward, FM, AM, and tuning. So this is, of course, a receiver. The Yamaha Natural Sound Receiver R-S300. Let's turn it on and see what's up. So we've got the little display there, and the input selector is like so. Phono, dock. It's got a thing for an iPod dock on the back. Tuner, CD, tape, line 1, line 2. It also is showing now that speaker A is selected. A relay. Pure direct. A little light that comes on and alerts us there. Oh yeah, Pure Direct actually turns off the display, so any sort of suspected digital noise or something that might be associated with the display is off. All right, let's see. Volume is interesting. It's And so it shows us the volume digitally as continuous adjustment, at least to 3 significant figures, supposedly. And I don't know how many turns this thing has got, but it's definitely more than just a 1-turn volume type knob. Oh, interesting. I hear some static now. So we go way up. This is very loud. Ah, max volume. Hear the hiss? Of course, it is set on phono. Let's see if I set it over to CD. Let's see if it also hisses in max volume. Yeah, that's to be expected. Max volume on the CD setting, no hiss. Let's check out the back panel. Got our phono inputs and our ground here. Remote in and out, little jacks. Down here is our CD jacks. Tape, playback and record. So it's got the tape, playback and record, but it also allows for playback and record on input 1. Input 2 just has inputs. Here's for the iPod dock. Let's see, jacks for antennas. Subwoofer out. Here are the speaker jacks. These are sort of 5-way binding posts. They're kind of encapsulated, so it's actually relatively easy to get these pretty heavy gauge wires in there. And then over here we've got a selector for low or high impedance speakers. Oh, power management on and off right here. Well, I gotta look inside. Alrighty, what do we have here? Power transformer. It's not super chunky, but it's not small. Supposing these are the main filter capacitors. 5,600 microfarads each. I'm a little surprised they're not higher value than that. Some more filter capacitors over here. Got a 16 volt 4700 microfarad one here, a 25 volt 3300 microfarad volt here, a couple of 25 volt 6800 microfarad capacitors here. I wonder if these are sort of in addition to sorts of capacitors. Interesting, look at these jumpers, they're pretty beefy. This obviously would be the heat sink for the power amp, the power transistors, which are bolted to the sides over here. NPN, PNP pairs. And push-pull. Oh, there's another heat sink over here. This is most likely part of the power supply. 3 relays here. These are going to be bias resistors here, 0.22 ohms. I haven't looked into how to set the bias current or voltage, or even if that's a thing anymore. Usually got 0.22 ohm resistors. That's in order to be able to set the bias current. But I don't see any potentiometers with which to do that. And then there's these vertical circuit boards over here. I'm figuring this one must be the phono preamp. Other preamp functions probably here and probably over here. You know, it's interesting, there's not a whole lot of components. Yeah, there's of course, you know, IC back here for the display. You know, it's typically one of the things that that distresses me about modern gear is its reliance on integrated circuits, and those are usually proprietary and or short-lived and therefore irreplaceable. It's a lot of room in here. It's a pretty roomy chassis, you know, which is kind of interesting given all the functions that it has. It looks like these boards here plug into this board down here. But you know, it's interesting, the other Yamaha receiver that I have is also relatively roomy inside. It's worth talking about the fit and finish. It's just a metal case for the top. You know, just bent metal. Nothing extraordinary there. The faceplate is metal. Looks like aluminum, anodized aluminum probably. So it's all metal. Well, the knobs are kind of plasticky. The volume knob and the input select knob are both feel plasticky, so they don't have a great knob feel for that reason. These ones I kind of like, but those also feel plastic. I don't know if they are or not, but they probably are. You know, it's reasonably heavy. Most of that's the iron here. Let's check out this Pioneer SX-828. It really is a thing of beauty. For me, the aesthetics of it leave a little bit to be desired, but then you turn it on, and oh my goodness. It's, I mean, that dial is just amazing. Okay, let's see. It's packed full of functionality. We've got all sorts of speaker combinations. We can hook up to 3 sets of speakers and have 2 of them running at the same time. It can drive 4 ohm speakers with no problem, which the Yamaha can as well. We've got the bass control and the treble control, and the different channels can be controlled separately because we have split knobs here. Got a low and high filter, of course balance, volume, loudness, audio muting, tape monitor 1, tape monitor 2. We also have mic inputs over here, aux, mic, phono 1 and phono 2, FM, auto, mono, AM. We've got a variety of mono options here. So lots of inputs, and of course everything's manually controlled. FM muting, and we've got a dimmer switch. If we're operating in a dark room and we didn't want this to be so bright, we can dim the lights. And the back panel is a back panel. The stock speaker connections for the Yamaha are a big win over the stock speaker connections of the Pioneer, although I've modified it by adding some modern 5-way binding posts. But, you know, they're not super secure in there. Just couldn't really get them to be super secure. We've got pre-out and main in jacks. And of course we don't have an iPod docking connector or anything like that. So connections of modern gear must be done with an RCA connection. That said, does anybody use an iPod dock anymore? I don't know. The problem with having modern sorts of technology like that is that at the rate that technology changes these days, it's obsolete in a few years. I think this Yamaha went out of production in 2017, and already this sort of iPod dock thing I think is pretty obsolete. Okay, let's look inside the SX-828. Well, pretty much everything is covered with covers. The tuner is in here, power amp under here, the preamp board is underneath, as is the head amp and the protection circuit. We can see the main filter capacitors here, which have been replaced by me. In fact, almost everything in here has been replaced. Of course, not the big power transformer, not the variable air gap capacitor for tuning. I've replaced all the lamps, almost all the resistors, all the electrolytic capacitors, and some of the other capacitors as well. It's a tight package. Not much extra room in here, that's for sure. Of course, the Pioneer's case is just beautiful. I mean, even though this wood isn't pristine by any means, in fact, it's relatively beat up, it still just has a beauty and luster that are just a hands-down winner over the black finish of the Yamaha. The aesthetics of the Pioneer is just a hands-down winner over the Yamaha as far as I'm concerned. I suppose some people might like this sort of neat black modern look, and I think they did make them in a silver face, sort of a retro look a bit, I guess. But this is just stunning to me. Even as old and beat up as it is, it just has a lasting appeal that the other just doesn't. I will be really interested to listen to these two and compare them side by side. It's entirely possible that the Yamaha will have a really nice sound to it that is comparable to the Pioneer. They're not that far off in terms of power. This is 50 watts per channel. This is either 54 or 60 watts per channel. I forget which. So pretty comparable in terms of the power that they can deliver. I wouldn't be surprised if this one won, at least on some counts. Let's go song by song. Ricky Lee Jones, Chuck E's in Love. I think I turned the Pioneer up a little bit louder than I did the Yamaha, but I'm not sure. The Pioneer's volume control is way more sensitive than the Yamaha. The Yamaha is like a 20-turn pot kind of thing, whereas the Pioneer's a 7/8 or 3/4 turn pot. I listened to both without loudness, although I did play a little bit with the loudness control on the Yamaha. Mainly I left it in the pure direct mode, so bypassing everything. I was surprised at how pronounced and solid, I don't know, the bass was with the Yamaha. It seemed to me that the Pioneer maybe rolled off a little bit of the bass, at least on the lowest end. The Yamaha seemed to maybe have a little more grumble or grunt to it. Although the Pioneer had, I think, maybe the stronger kick drum. And the Pioneer seemed sort of fuller, but that might also be sort of less separation among instruments. It seemed like maybe the Yamaha had a little more of the sparkle on the edges that is different between the channels. It seemed a bit wider and a little bit clearer. Which did I like better? It's not a blind test. Because I know just sitting here, and I know listening, that it's going to be awfully hard for me to say that I preferred the Yamaha over the Pioneer, given my feelings about vintage stereo, the amount of work I've put into the Pioneer, all that stuff. I don't know. They're a little bit different. They're not very different, but they're a little bit different. You know, kind of in the way that the Tannoy Monitor Golds are different from the ADS L730s. The Pioneer has that sort of fuller sound to it. The Yamaha seems to have a little more separation among the instruments. But the Pioneer just feels a little bit more robust, even though the bass might have been a little bit rolled off. That really rich mid-range. But you know, kind of a matter of taste. Not like the Pioneer blew the Yamaha out of the water by any means. Interesting comparison that way. The Cure, In Between Days. You know, same kind of thing. The Pioneer seemed to fill in more in the middle. I didn't notice on this track that much difference in the bass, which leads me to think maybe my impression of the difference in the bass in the Ricky Lee Jones song was my imagination, but maybe not. But not that much difference. Again, just that sort of a little bit more separation of the instruments, a little more space in the Yamaha, and a little bit fuller sound in the middle, more shimmer with the Pioneer. I mean, and again, they both sound really good. I love these speakers. The speakers, I'm listening to the ADS L730s, and they're really good speakers. They're going to make any decent amplifiers sound good. So, the Shins, Name for You. I love that song. I was a little disappointed in how it sounded on the Yamaha, and the Pioneer didn't disappoint. But it was subtle, I mean, again, the Pioneer has that sparkle that the Yamaha doesn't quite. But, again, it's not a blind test. It's not a blind test. So I really dug both of them. It's a tough one. It's really tough. It may be that the Yamaha is flatter, more accurate. It may be that the Pioneer has a bit of a house sound, a little bit of bloom in the mids and upper mids, and even into the lower, tweeters, whatever. The Pioneer just sounds really nice in a way that the Yamaha doesn't quite. If you can get the Yamaha for $100 and it costs you $1,000 for the Pioneer, yeah, that'd be tough. On the other hand, if that kind of money for the whole package that the Pioneer is, that's not that much money. I think just a lot of people who are really into hi-fi aren't going to think too awfully much about spending that $1,000 for a piece they really love. And I think that's kind of what it's going to come down to, is that the Pioneer inspires that kind of love with the vintage aesthetics and the vintage sound that the Yamaha doesn't have. The Yamaha just seems more disposable. The case isn't as substantial. The knobs are plasticky. It doesn't have that solidity, that permanence, and just the beauty that the Pioneer has. But, I think for somebody just starting out, the Yamaha is a really attractive way to go. Especially if what you're looking to do is, for now, spend most of the money on the speakers. Say you've got $1,200 and maybe you've already got a turntable. Let's just, for instance, say you've got a source already and you need an amplifier or receiver and some speakers, and you got $1,200. Would I recommend spending $1,000 on the Pioneer and then $200 on speakers? Probably not. I mean, even though you could probably find some pretty good speakers for a couple $100, you'd be in that same sort of position as if you had picked up the Pioneer for $200. Again, you could probably pick up one of these Pioneers for a couple $300, but you'd probably need to be sinking some money into it. So, if you had $1,200 and you could get a really good deal on the Pioneer, then maybe that'd be the way to go. But let's say you had a line on some really sweet speakers, but they were kind of on the, $1,000 end, then that Yamaha is looking pretty attractive. I think it's all about budget and where you want to spend your money and where you can spend your money. And if you could spend a lot of that money on some really nice speakers, that might be the way to go. I'm not sure that I'm a really good case for any of these things. I never spend that much money on speakers or amplifiers. I spend on the low end and then I build them up to be great. I think I said in a prior video, I'm probably into that Pioneer for about $300, and it's fully restored and ship shape. The exterior's a little rough, but not bad at all. In fact, quite beautiful, really, just not perfect. Of the speakers I have here, probably these ADS L730s are the ones that I've spent the most money on. I can't remember how much I paid for them, $200 or $300 maybe. Yeah, enough that I thought that I intended to sell them right away. But I just seem to not quite get around to putting them up for sale. On the other hand, they're still here in my test rig and not in one of my sort of more permanent listening setups. So, and I put work into them too. I recapped them, repainted the grills, given some TLC to the finish. I think it's an interesting comparison. I thought this might be an interesting comparison. This is a comparison that I was really interested in doing because of the similar power of these two amplifiers, these two receivers, I mean, and how much one is going to cost you, and the aesthetics of it being so, both of those things being so different from the other, the more modern one. You know, just seeming more disposable, but still really good technology, you know, really, you know, the money in that is put into the sound, I gotta say. It's, the money's not in the fit and finish, it's in the interior. Yeah. Anyway, pretty interesting. Hope you liked it. If you did, hey, give me a subscription, give the video a like, share it, give me a comment. What do you think? You know, this is one of those sort of never-ending discussions with vintage or new. Often the argument for vintage is that you can get it a lot cheaper than something of comparable quality new. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of high-end new equipment, so it's hard for me to say. And it might be interesting, you know, to compare either one of these to one of my tube amps to see what I think there. Pretty sure I would go for the tube amp. I think that would bring that sparkle into those voices that the solid state amps don't quite do. Anyway, y'all have a great day. Talk to you later. Come on, how could I resist? So using the pre-outs from the Pioneer into my new DGSE-1. See how it sounds. Well, I hope nobody's too disappointed that I threw in that DGSE-1 at the end there. God. I mean, like, it's still, you know, to be perfectly honest, it's not a night and day difference from one to the other. Still, that DGSE-1, it just, you know, it chills. You know, you just get those chills and friggin' physiologic reaction to the sound from that amp that I don't get with the others. Yeah, it's something, isn't it? Anyway, all right, I think that's enough. Finally, I won't do the other songs on the tube amp. It's just had to throw that in there because the DGSE-1 just really fulfills that expectation that I have of this song just being amazing. So, again, you know, it's not a blind test. Can I say that again? Not a blind test. But man, 3 watts per channel of that thing up against the 50 watts per channel of the other two, something else. I mean, obviously, if you crank it up, you're gonna reach its limits way sooner than on the other, but a bargain at $900. Seriously, oh my God. All right, take care, y'all.